Yawatuhu pani enchamukin ilakayo kashtu.
So the wind, the spirit. So the great sea, the great dragon of intent goes into the spirit. So these signs are related as in that they are the first four signs. So there's like another family, you could say, of like the first four signs of one of each element, like the first cycle through the elements, and then it continues. So the first cycle through the elements, the first four signs, are kind of the best depictions of the element itself. And as you can see, for the fire is the dragon. So for the air is air, wind. Ik means air or wind. Ik. It's kind of the sound in Maya. It's an elongated ik. It's not ik. It's ik. And I don't even get this 100%, but if you make an even longer ik, it means moon. Okay, so that gets kind of complicated as far as pronunciation. So it's ik, ik, and so there's three sounds: ik, ik, right? So you want the second one. You want the ik, which is wind. In Nahuatl is Ehekatl. Once an elder or a wise man told me, look at the similarity between these sounds, even if they're supposed to be very different language roots. Ik, ehek, ik, ehekatl, ehekatl, ik. In the Nahuatl language, the word ihiyotl is for breath, and also for the breath of life. And the word ihki, no ihki, means my interior, sometimes translated as my stomach. You know how we have my gut, as we say sometimes, my gut feeling. In Nahuatl, no ihki, my insideness says, that space inside of me speaks, expresses. So this is the sign of expression. It's the most essential form of all the different iks that we'll be seeing as we go through the signs. This is the clearest one. So as far as, so maybe Emosh is kind of turbulent. And when we see the last one of the intent signs, you'll see that it's the most refined of the signs, of the fire signs. I guess here it's kind of different. On the wind signs, this first sign, you'll notice, is the clearest of all the spirit signs, of all the wind signs. The purest, the most transparent. All of this is keywords, and you see them here. Crystalline, right? So as we repeat the wind signs, as we go into the next cycles, we're going to see that they get less crystalline. Maybe until the last one, which is the Tihash. But this one is by far the most pure, the most crystalline, the easiest to see, the easiest to deal with, the easiest to understand, and is the symbol. It represents, and you can see that maybe from the symbol. And this symbol, which is the shape of many of the windows in Maya temples, and you would ask, why are some of the windows in the Maya temples T-shaped? So this is the wind cross, the T cross, or the wind cross, the Ik cross. And it represents that unbreakable, purest, most crystalline form of the spirit. So it's that spirit that hasn't been contaminated, that hasn't been bewitched. We'll see that there's a wind sign of spell. So this is there's a difference here in the Cholkij cosmology. There's wind of spell, or a wind sign that are the spells, and there is a sign which is this one, that is the pure form of the spirit. It hasn't been contaminated by a spell. So it's almost like we need this. We really need this. We need this cross. We need to have some type of frame or reference point that says this is what it is before it's been contaminated by later processes, by other intents, by other spirits, by other people. It's the cleanest, purest form of spirit. Therefore, it speaks from the spirit, from the source. It is the wind of the source. So that's what this god, Ehekatl, represents in the Mexica. The god Ehekatl, represented by a long mouth, always, and this little puff in his head. It means a god or an entity of the spirit. What's the natives in farther north sometimes call the sacred spirit, or the spirit. I'm not an expert in those worldviews, but maybe it's the same as Wakantanka, the great mystery. Is it the same, or is it not the same? I knew there was a Dene guy here. I miss him. I wish I could see him, but I haven't seen him. And so what would be the Dene version of Ehekatl? Is there a Dene version of the wind, of the spirit? What is the spirit called? In Mexica, it's Ehekatl. And it represents this communications coming direct from source without pollution. So there is that concept of like the divine word. It's the divine word, the sacred word, the most essential source language. A language that hasn't been... Language has a natural tendency to transform, to include diversity. As we progress into any process, it gets more complex, it gets more diverse. That's one of the principles in native North and South American worldview, is the inclusion of diversity. Everything is diverse. It's one of the principles of life, not just people's worldview, but an actual principle of life. Why don't we live in a world where it's like very few species, or one species that is really perfect? Why are there so many different beings that are so different, and birds and creatures that fly and make lights? And why is there fish deep under the sea where it's so difficult to develop life? Why? You would ask yourself, because of diversity, because there's this principle of diversity. And I guess language and anything then has a tendency to develop diversity. So we need diversity, I guess, needs some type of guidance to what is the mother structure, what is the origin point. So this is the origin language. It speaks of the origin language of the most pure form of spirit language, or of language itself. And one of the main symbols is the wind itself. The wind then would does incarnate the language of the spirit. And this is a practice that is taught in Toltec teaching, and if in other native cultures, is listening to the wind and to spirit. Being able to, and I guess it's listening, it's not speaking. Because maybe this essential wind, this essential language, is so essential that it's not in the process of replicating or of listening. It's just kind of like the breath of life, right? So it's something that we need to listen instead of replying to. We just need to listen. And then it does have this sense of that's an indisputable thing. The spirit wants this, and it's not open to dialogue. It's not open to your feedback. It's what the spirit wants. I guess in the practice this can get really confusing, right? But this is the sense of this sign, and all of this defines very much the personality of the person of this sign, of the wind sign. They naturally have this personality of being so transparent, so pure, so translucent. They're even beautiful people, really beautiful, not just physically, but in the way that they act. They are really pure in their, not because they're trying to be pure, not because they're trying to be social oriented like a Na'ach, not because they're trying to be teachers or leaders or save something or something, somebody or something, but just because of nature in them that is very pure. Now, we're still humans, and a person of the Ik sign is still a human. So even if they have this Nawal in them, they will fall, and this is their biggest drawback, is they fall into fixation. So if you go to psychologists and you ask who are of their patients, I mean, I would bet that Ik signs is one of the most common persons that goes to a psychologist, because they have this really big problem. This is like the big, if for the Emosh it was stagnation and inaction and impurity, then for the Ik is mental fixation. They have a real big problem with mental fixation. Look at how I'm being very correct with the Nawals, treating them in a relationship way, not in a practical way. That means I will not cut off anything about the Nawals just to make the classes fair or the sessions be whatever length or whatever. I'm not going to do that. It's more important to keep your relationship. And that's another invitation for you guys, is to treat everything, including the Nawals, as something that is alive. So if you become too practical at it, they're alive. So they will respond to whatever treatment you give them. So make sure you don't cut them off. So I'm not going to cut off Ik. There's so much more to say about Ik, and I'm going to leave that. We'll stay mentally fixated with an idea, and I'll tell you all about this, how Ik people get fixated mentally, and because of the modern overworld culture, they see that as a problem. They figure, oh, this is a problem. I need to see a psychologist. My impression with wind people is it's always a really good impression. That's one of the magic that wind people have, is that they always have I mean, I guess it can vary. Some people might not like it, but in general, they always look nice. They always look clean. They're very clean kind of looking people. Always very, there's something attractive about them which is it's not really like a mysterious magnetism. It's the contrary to a mysterious magnetism. It's a kind of like a special beauty kind of thing. They're always kind of very beautiful somehow. They captivate by being very beautiful, and that's kind of like a good sign, or a good aspect of their sign. Of course, then they're in their positive characteristics. You will find an extraordinary imagination, mental agility, good with language, look good at convincing others. I, for example, met a writer that is of this sign. I was for a while giving her personal consultations, and kind of like a known writer from this part of the country. And they have that skill with them. They're very good at writing, they're very good at imagining, and very good at communicating. And as that can be their positive side, it can also play negatively for them, because they can fall for their imagination. That's kind of like the biggest negative trait of this sign, is that they can sometimes believe something that they are just imagining. Now, let's all put ourselves in the shoes of the Ek, and remember that each one of us has each one of the signs. And it's a really good exercise to put yourself in the shoes of each sign, and to think everything I'm talking about this sign right now, like, find what applies to you, because we all are like an Ek, so, sometimes, or to some extent. And so we all have good imagination, we all have mental agility, we all like to communicate. Maybe that's blocked in some people. If it is, it would be really good to unblock it. We all have a capacity to receive direct messages from spirit, very clean, pure messages from spirit. We talked about that. This is the most essential of all the wind signs. It's the first wind sign, so it's the least polluted of all the wind signs, if you want to look at it that way. And another very interesting trait is that it's the sign that it gets the most affected by the moon. And that is really noticeable. And I've observed it on wind people, and it is really noticeable. Then again, we all are affected by the moon. So we should pay attention to the moon always, and see how it is affecting our hormones, if we are moody, if we are horny, if we are happy, if we're sad, we're tired. The moon can play a role in that. But the wind people show it a lot more. When people that are of this sign, they do manifest that with a lot more strength. And the imagination part, the negative part, is that they can sometimes imagine something being real and it's not real. They can be seeing something that is not there. And I've been facing this situation with the dog sign lately, where I've been showing a person with a dog sign that they have this issue of, but then it's an issue that we all have. Everybody has this issue. Everybody tends to, and I think I saw a post in here in Rune Soup, which was pretty spot on about that meme, where we're always finding sometimes we are bound just by our habits and how our character has been shaped, and we want some clarity, mental clarity, and instead our mind just tricks us into more confusion. And that's so prevalent. And sometimes we do need help with that. Sometimes that's why sometimes it is important to find a third person, a shaman if you want. It's not because that person is really special or because they know a lot. It's just because it's just a good thing to have a third, somebody else, another perspective, tell us something and help us see if our projections or if our thoughts are just fathoms of our imagination, or are they really something that we are seeing? Now, for people of this sign, it's going to be probably their biggest challenge in life is working with that. They probably will find that situation where they will doubt of the reality that they're seeing. Now, I think that would happen if they are open, of course, to a spiritual path. That's important to clear out, because you will find, and I know a person of the wind sign that is really not open to and what is a spiritual path in this case? It's the openness to learn and to change. I recently also saw a meme, which I find a good one, or a post that said that the humans are the only, what makes us humans is that we can change, that we can actually learn from our mistakes or from the past and change. Of course, then this doesn't happen that often or as often as we would like it to happen. And sometimes we don't change as much as we wish to. But if you have that openness, then you might eventually change a habit, change a mindset. And that's what makes us humans. Now, let's bring into consideration the fact that we live in a world of very intense dehumanization. And so then we live surrounded by people that are very inhuman, and we are going to see a lot of that. So we might find a person that is of a eek sign, and we have to put that into perspective. See, okay, is this a person that, not because they're eek is going to mean that they're receiving messages from spirit, that they're clairvoyants, that they are someone that can actually have a sacred message. Sometimes they're very closed inside of the consumerist mindset, and that is a very common thing to see with a unique person that is not on this openness to learning, is that they'll just try to enjoy life, they'll just try to have fun, and so they don't have to go into doubting their own minds. So I guess that anyone that is on the path of learning, of expansion, is always going to want to doubt himself. I think that would be kind of one of the gateways to expansion, is doubting what you know, doubting what you think. Is this thought really mine? Now this sign is going to be a good sign to represent in case of a reading, or in case of any type of magic you want to do. It is the sign that's going to represent those codes and languages, or those signs that can manifest or tell us a sign of something. This is kind of like the means of communication. This is the mouth of the spirit, right? If you look at the Mexica version, and I showed this on the last class. Okay, I want the pen thing Why is it so little? Um, so you can see that it has a long mouth. It has something coming out of the mouth. So that represents voice, the voice. And the wind sign, the ik sign, is always going to represent that voice of spirit that can be found in many, many ways, in many places. It can be the wind itself, it can be a window, it can be a sign, it can be, I mean, the runes, like the runes are all like signs. They're all pieces of coded language. The code, the language of the spirit. What is the language of spirit? Can we decode that? Can we read that? Can we understand it? Well, this is going to be the Nahual you want to ask that to. This is the Nahual you want to ask for guidance, to decode, to understand, to make sure that you are decoding the spirit and not a tricky mind. Okay? Now, so that would be the development as well of a person of this sign, somebody that is always trying to see reality beyond their imagination. And as we get further into the other signs, we'll see that blurs. I mean, what is reality? So, then other characteristics of trying to think of some more things to say about the sign. They tend to be thin people. I talked about the window, the T-shaped. To me, that somehow makes me think of skinny people. I never really met somebody that's not that skinny of this sign, but maybe there is. Now the bird, the hummingbird, it's one of the animals of the Nahuals of this sign. So any sign can have and has, it can have more than one animal that represents it. I've worked a lot more with the hummingbird for this sign than the hawk. Very little hawk I've worked with, but I've even done a jewelry piece when I used to be a jeweler for a person of this sign, and I did a hummingbird and put a hummingbird feather. Now, parts of the body, then the parts that have to do with respiration, the throat, breath, and I would say voice. Voice is also a very important part of us and a very important thing to have developed, not blocked, something that we need to constantly work on, to cultivate. We need to sing, and I think I talked about that too on the last class. So now we're in a very pure, I feel very pure about this sign. Kind of, what? There's not more to talk about this? So let's go on to the next sign. Oh wait, yeah, we need to cover this. Okay, with this we can talk a little bit more. Now, we've seen what affinity signs are, the family of affinity. So I still don't like the adjectives I sometimes give to each one of the families. It's not really that the adjectives are good descriptions, but they might come close. They might bring us close to what the kind of the general feeling of the family. So for this family, I like to think of it as the pretty ones, the pure ones, the good guys. Like this is the family of the good signs. This is the good boys right here. And of course, Ik is the wind of those. The fire would be the Noch, which is a sign of nobility, a very noble sign, very difficult to see the wrong in a Noch sign, although they can be they can act very wrong. Anybody can act wrong. Anybody can be a bad guy. But then this family, it always has a kind of like a look. They always look good. They always seem to be very good people. Even if you get to meet them profoundly, you will always judge them in a good way. Even if they are not really sometimes that good of a people. Sometimes we don't really judge properly. And that can be something that happens with this family. Very difficult to find bad judgment on a noch, on an ik, on a kech. Very, very difficult. Kech, the deer, is considered the best sign of all the signs. The most balanced, healing of all the signs. So very difficult to find bad in him. So out of all these three, I guess the one that could be the least good sign, in the sense of you'll find people that are mean or that can be kind of wrong, or the or the malinali, the human sign. Because then human represents the experiences and the mistakes, and it represents free will. So somebody with free will, if we all have free will, we want to be able to execute that free will. And sometimes we will make mistakes because we want to make mistakes. We are here to make mistakes. And making mistakes is doing bad, not doing good. And the ebb sign, or is going to represent that. So out of these four signs, this is going to be... So this is now another key here for the affinity signs. I talked about how the relationships play out in affinity signs on the first sign. And I don't know if I mentioned that out of all the affinity signs, so supposedly if we were very, very natural and in a very optimal state, we would find our best relationships, our best profound love relationships with an affinity sign. Now, to this, I would really like make a distinction of, well, what is love? And you can have very profound love relationships that are not necessarily a sexual relationship. So that's where wanting to fit everything into the marriage paradigm of there's only one person you can deeply love, and you want to find the best affinity in that person. That is, I believe, very romantic of the European romance model, and also very monotheistic, monogamic. So you might find your strongest relationships be with an affinity sign, but maybe it won't be your partner. I mean, maybe it'll be your son or your mother or some friend or somebody that you need to understand that you have that really, really profound affinity relationship, but it's not necessarily, doesn't have to be your partner, doesn't have to be your couple. Okay? Now, in case that you were wondering what would be the best couple or the best match in this affinity signs, then the key is the one that's right in front. So if you're the wind, is the ebb. If you're the kech, it would be the noch. So it's the one across you. That's out of all the four. So the wind has affinity with all these other three signs. So if you're an ik and you find anyone with one of these signs, even your own, you have a strong affinity. But then if you find somebody of the ebb sign, you would maybe find even more affinity. That's like the strongest affinity you have is with the sign right across in this cross of affinity. Now, harmonic signs, you've seen how I've mentioned how all of the same elements, people that walk side to side, and the affinities, people that are facing each other, very explosive relationship and a very balanced relationship. We're in the first round then of the wind signs. As we advance, we're going to be going around the wheel of the elements. We're going to be expanding each one of the elements into a greater level. Now, the Maya cross is a specific placement with other signs. And you will see that in the Maya cross, these placements are always. So let's clear this out. There's masculine and there's feminine signs. Okay. Now in this is like not overwhelming. I mean, you'll find a lot of feminine traits in masculine signs, and some signs you'll find that are more masculine than others, or feminine than others. But you have a grosso modo masculine, feminine. So the masculine would be the red and blues, would be fires and waters, and the feminines would be winds and earths. Okay? So you'll see that in the Maya cross, it's always the signs that either the masculines or the feminines. So you can make a chart. You can extend this placement. Like, what would be the sign that's above the Ahpu here, right? And then above that one, so you can extend this chart and find any Maya cross of any sign with that chart. But there's two charts, one of the wind and earth signs and one of the water and fire signs, masculine and feminine. So in the conception, remember, this is the conception, this is the destiny, and these are the hemispheres. The conception talks about our origin, it talks about our infancy, it talks about what we desired to be at one point. And then the destiny is what we finally learned to be after we've lived the experience of our life. So the experience of our life is our sign. It's also then what we are trying to be, what we look up to being. Oh, somehow I wanted to be this, but then I really admire this. Okay? So in the case of the wind, now you can see here that the wind, talking about a little bit about the kihab, since it showed up here, what's it called? No, it's not kihab. It's I forgot the word for the Maya word for the sign, for the drawing. So you can see that instead of a cross, it's a tongue sticking out. This is a tongue. This can be drawn different ways. You'll see it drawn in a way that to me it's a little too childish, where they put a little smiley face with a tongue. So I don't like to use that one. But then at the same time, the tongue with the mouth can look like a T-cross. So what is the conception of the wind sign is the Ish, the jaguar up here. So the Ish is the sign of magic and of wizardry. So it's a lot more complex wind sign. It's all the way up here. It has many more levels. So that talks about the wind conception. The mind of the people of wind is kind of like an enchantment. Somebody that is always enchanting themselves. They like to enchant themselves. They like to think in a way that is enchanting. Sometimes the word for the Ish, maybe it's not, the best word is not magic, but rather enchantment. And enchantment in the sense of dressing something or playing something or in a way that it enchants, that attracts attention, that also it makes that magic. It's like the magic of magicians, where they play with your attention, they play with how they look and how things look, and in that way they take your attention to where they want to take your attention, and that way they sneak things from behind without you seeing them. That's enchantment. And that speaks of the ik mind being very, very enchanting, very somebody that is always thinking of a good idea, thinking of a good, like of a magical thing that they want to do. Or it can be someone that is always thinking of how can we make this more magical. And sometimes that can get, for these people, a little bit, if you look at it from somebody else's perspective, a little bit, we have a Spanish word, ñoño, which is like nerdy, or can be like, it's too masked, it's too much makeup. Like somebody that always wants to have things all nice, and they want things to play out really nice, and that's what they pay their attention to. They're not looking for the raw facts and the raw reality. They're not looking for the truth. They're looking to enchant themselves. They're looking for magic. So that starts revealing the personality of the ik, and how not necessarily an ik person is really the word, the mouth of spirit. Beware of that, because that's a tendency. When I started with this and I would see an ik sign, I would get like an immediate image of this person represents spirit. This is spirit talking through this person, and I would want to see that. And of course, then the person has that energy, and they inspire that in people. They inspire something. But then as you look at the cross, you'll see that big part of that is that they are enchanting that magic. They are the ones that are making themselves look that way. And it's not really that the spirit is talking through them. And that we must see that people are people, humans are humans. Not because somebody is an ik sign, it means they are the spirit. They are the word of the spirit. Okay? So that's revealing here some things. Now, then what does it have to do? Okay, so it's the ik sign, the ik person likes an enchanting life. They want to have everything so nice and have a family, and they want to have their picket fence and have the, everything be really neat, and they want to look really neat. They want to look very acceptable. They want to look clean. They want to look good. But then they'll face themselves making justice, which is this dog sign down here. The dog sign represents the justice, and we saw the mammal consciousness of good and bad, of happy and sad, angry, happy, the mammal consciousness. And we're going to, of course, go deep into that when we go with the dog sign. So the ik sign wants to be that. So that's the transformation of the ik, where as it matures, it will go from just wanting to have like a really enchanting life into, wait a minute, there's injustices in the world. There are things that are wrong, and I want to make a difference. I want to do something. So they'll search for that eventually, if they, as I mentioned in the other session, and maybe I'll mention in each one of the signs, if you are following your destiny, if you're meeting your destiny. Remember, this is your destiny sign. It does not reveal how you are beyond this life. It reveals what you are here to do on this life. That is this sign. That is your Nahualquij. That's its role. For the hemispheres, we have the Ahmak, the transmission of expression, and we have the Anil, the art and the star of Venus. Both of those signs extremely artistic, and of course then they give the Ik person an extremely high skill of artistic expression. They can be very good at expressing art. They can have a very good balance, because the Ahmak is kind of like the art of expression that is not bound by aesthetics. So it's that valid art of expressing something, but in that expression, you're not looking to have an aesthetic statement, right? So it's like this ugly art that is very much of modern art, right? And then the Anil is kind of very different, where it seeks artistic expression. It seeks a lot of symmetry. It seeks perfection. And that's the star of Venus in its daylight phase, in its morning phase. And Ik has both sides, so it can choose and it can balance. So you'll find that Ik people, they're not going to be, so that's a way to find an Ik person, or to tell that somebody's Ik. You can tell that they are kind of, first you get this impression of purity, of cleanliness, of inspiration. It's almost like if you look at them and immediately you want to breathe. You want to, like, oh, you're inspired by their looks, by their energy, by the energy they emanate. So after you look closely at them, you will see those two sides. You'll see that, wait a minute, yeah, there's something imperfect in that person. It's like they want to look clean and perfect, but they also find a way to not look clean and not look perfect. It's kind of very balanced. So they do look clean and kind of very aesthetical, but in a balanced way. It's like not perfect. It's like there's some certain things that are not that aesthetical in them that you will find in them. That's a way to tell an Ik sign. And the other thing is that I was saying, I never got to say it, is that they end up very easily with psychologists because of fixation. Because they have a hard time getting things out of their mind. They'll have something come into their minds, an idea, and they're very obsessive, right? So they can be very, very obsessed people. And that's kind of like the worst trait that you will find with this sign. Now, for the day, let's look at the day real quick. I want to cover everything, because as we go along the signs, I will explain the broad sense, the general explanation of what it means in this process of creation of the worldview of Mesoamerica. And then we'll go into people, describe people, the destiny of a person with this sign. And then we'd have to see how a day plays out. Sometimes it can be similar. Sometimes there can be differences. Like a person I can say something about a person, and then a completely different thing about how the day plays out. Now, for the days, you can expect a very, very inspiring, clear day. Very difficult to have a cloudy day. I mean, you'll be amazed how much of the weather actually shows up in this, okay? I'm amazed. Like, for example, the Sunday, the Ahpu, the How day. it's very common for it to be sunny. The storm day, it's very common for storm day to be cloudy or raining. It's like not obligatory, but it's very common. So in this day, it's very common to have a very clear, sunny, crystal clear day, clean atmosphere, no haze. That's the kind of exemplary day of an Eek day. It's a day when you will get a very strong inspiration, very strong message, a very strong idea. It's going to be a very fixed day, a very solid day. It's going to flow easily. Sometimes, now the wind has this trait. It's always beautiful. It's always nice. Everybody likes a nice breeze. The breeze is always good. But sometimes the wind can topple buildings. They can topple trees. It can get strong and violent. And that can happen on an Eek day. It's not very common. It really isn't common. You don't really want to expect that because it's very rare. But one day it'll happen to you. You'll be amazed on the fact that a very, very violent thing happened to you on an Eek day. A very strong, violent change, something that just came out of the blue, something that just changed your life, or some situation that was very intense. It can be common to see that happen on an Eek day. But then don't expect that. It can be very rare for that to happen, but it can happen. It's just like the wind. It's like the most common things that wind is nice, but sometimes the wind gets strong and violent, and you can expect that from an Eek day. Then of course, it's always going to be a good day for prayer, for expression, for art, for writing, and everything that you can make out of what I've already told you. It's a good day for that. And I guess that's all I can say about the Eek.
Pani encamukin ila kayo kastro